Is this for real? Could this possibly be? You know, at first you think that you've got so much proof and evidence that of course we're living on a spinning ball, and NASA's been to outer space, and there's all these other ball planets and everything. The whole thing seems so solid at first, but when you start looking into the evidence for the flat Earth and the refutations for the supposed proofs of a ball Earth, like the Eratosthenes experiment and the Foucault's pendulum and the Coriolis effect and all these other things that they cite, or the ships disappearing below the horizon, or circumnavigation. They've got plenty of different proofs, but when you look into it more and more, and if you got the ball Earth in your right hand and the flat Earth in your left hand, the more you look into the evidence for and against, the more your flat Earth hand just starts being weighed down and the ball Earth hand starts being lifted up, and you see that there really is no evidence whatsoever that we're living on a spinning ball. And so this is not at all anti-science, the flat, motionless Earth. It's very pro-science, but what we've been taught is a pseudo-science. And so that's why people who've been indoctrinated into the pseudo-spinning ball Earth science look at this new flat Earth perspective as being totally anti-science, as you said. But the more you look into it, you'll see that this is very scientific. Experiments have been done and repeated, calculations have been made, and you can make them yourself to prove that the Earth doesn't have the curvature that they say it does. So if we are living on a ball, they say it's 25,000 miles in circumference, and using spherical trigonometry, it goes out to there being 8 inches per mile, varying inversely with the square of the mile, which means that after the first mile, there's an 8-inch drop. After the second mile, 2 squared, 4, times 8 is 32, so it's 32 inches. After the next mile, 3 miles, 3 times 3, 9, times 8, 72 inches. So this is the kind of dip that you get on a sphere, 25,000 miles in circumference. You can use the Pythagorean theorem to figure this out. NASA agrees with this number anyway, so it's not a debated number that it goes down this way. What is debated is whether it actually does so. So there's been experiments done using flags, using laser leveling, using sextants and theodolites and different instruments to check over a series of miles whether this curvature is actually happening or not. And time again, when you take these measurements, there's no curvature whatsoever, not even a little bit of curve. So even if they got the circumference of the ball Earth off by, say, 4 times, if it was 100,000 miles around instead of 25,000, you'd still have some measurable, calculable curvature, which just isn't there when you take these measurements. And anyone can do them. You just need a flat area long enough. They've done measurements over 6 miles, 10 miles, 20 miles, and then with things like lighthouses, you can see the light from lighthouses at sea, depending on where you are and how high the light is, for over 100 miles, much further than you could on a ball Earth, even with refraction. It would be impossible to see them. Canals, railroads, tunnels are all built with no account made for the curvature, supposed curvature of the Earth as well. The horizon is always flat. No matter how high you go up, the horizon remains flat and rises to the eye of the observer. So you can see amateur balloon footage on the internet up over 20 miles high. The horizon remains flat, and it rises to the eye of the camera the whole way up. Now, if the horizon was really the curvature of the ball Earth, then as you rose up in a hot air balloon, say, you'd have to look down, further and further, looking down, down, to see the ball Earth, to see the horizon. But what actually happens is the horizon rises right up with you the entire way up. So as high as an independent rocket or balloon gets, the horizon rises all the way to your eye level and is flat all around. But when NASA shows us pictures, they claim to be much higher, and then there's curvature and the ball photos. But those are all CGI, or some of them are done through a round window, the earlier ones. But they're all fake images. There is no actual image of a ball Earth. If you Google it, you'll see that they're all composites, CGI, or literally taken through a round window in low Earth orbit. That's how they faked the first ones.
Eric, how do you know that they're composite? How do you know that they're not real photos?
Well, I actually admit that they're composite. Composite's their word, not mine, for their fake pictures. They say that there's satellites out there taking satellite images, and these satellite images, they receive ribbons of imagery, they call them, and then they have to extrapolate the ribbons of imagery out in Photoshop, and they admit it. So they can't apparently just take a photo or take some video out there from their satellites. The technology they use, they claim, is can only make a picture for us if they composite it and edit it in Photoshop. So
really?
They've got wow. In one of my videos, I've got a NASA guy talking about it, just admitting it straight out. He's like, yeah, well, they are Photoshopped, but they have to be.
Simmons' job is...
It's primarily taking data and making pictures out of it?
That's what this is. A composite of data sets from several different instruments translated into a picture.
In between each orbit?
So some of those are painted on.
It is Photoshop, but it's has to be.
Yeah, of course it has to be.
And then he tries to explain this ribbons of imagery nonsense about how they can't just take a photo. They have to do this, whatever, satellite imaging nonsense. It's just a way that they can get around the fact that there should be, if there really are 20, 30,000 satellites out there, as they say there are, there should be thousands and thousands of different images of the Earth. But Google images of the Earth for fun, and you'll see that there's very, very few. There was one, really, the Apollo 17 image, the one that you see in every science book, the one you see in every article ever written, ever. Sometimes they flip it upside down, or they change the tint to it sometimes. But you can see the circle cloud formations and the outline of Africa and everything. It's always the same. There's very few different images, and if you look at them with a keen eye, you can see that it's not an image. It's a painting. It's a CGI. It's not an actual photograph.
So you want to find the farthest point from that center. And it turns out sea level at the equator is farther away from the center of the Earth than sea level near the pole. It has nothing to do with global warming and melting of the ice caps.
Why is that?
Because Earth, we know it spins once a day. Yes, thank you. 3 people know how long a day lasts here.
Good for row number 2. They're off to a great start.
So you spin, when you spin pizza dough, it kind of flattens out. It gets wider in the middle. So Earth, throughout its life, even when it formed, it was spinning. And it got a little wider at the equator than it does at the poles. So it's not actually a sphere. It's oblate. And officially it's an oblate spheroid. That's what we call it. But not only that, it's slightly wider below the equator than above the equator.
A little chubbier.
A little chubbier.
Yeah.
Chubby's a good way. It's like pear-shaped.
Yeah.
So, it turns out the pear-shapedness is bigger than the height of Mount Everest above sea level.
We always indulge in a few pagan rites to appease the EVA gods. These little ceremonies are very, very important to ensure mission success if you do them right. These little ceremonies are very, very important to ensure mission success if you do them right. These little ceremonies are very, very important to ensure mission success if you do them right.
You want to have a fight? Let's have a real fight. The flat earth against the ball. That's the fight. That's the fight they don't want you to have. That's the fight they don't want you to entertain in your head. That's the fight they don't want you to entertain in your mind. Whether the images of the earth as a ball